Welcome to the Stellar Vault. Say hi in the comments to awaken the archive. Then like, subscribe, and let the tale begin.
The pipe had gone out twice already. Samuel didn't relight it. He held it cold against his teeth and watched the sky do what it always did, which was nothing. Boone lay across his boots, breathing in the heavy way old dogs breathe, half a snore in every exhale. The porch boards still held the day's heat. Out past the rail, the corn stood black against a paler black, and above it the stars shone so thick across the sky they looked like scattered diamonds. 9 o'clock, maybe a little after. He had sat in this chair every clear night for 11 years. Before that, he'd sat in it with someone, and the chair beside his was still on the porch, and he did not look at it. The light came from the west. It didn't streak the way the others did, the little ones that burned up in a blink. It held. It grew. It went from a point to a coin to something with weight, and it dragged a tail of white fire behind it, and it was coming down. Boone lifted his head. Samuel set the pipe on the rail. The thing crossed the whole sky in maybe 4 seconds. Low at the end. Too low. It passed over the barn roof close enough that he felt it should have torn the air apart, should have shaken the windows, should have made some god-awful sound. It made none. It went into the cornfield 200 yards out, and the stalks lit up orange from inside. A single hard pulse of light, and the ground took it. And there was nothing. No boom. No roll of thunder coming late across the flat. No ringing. Just the field, settling, and a smear of smoke going up gray against the stars, and the crickets that had stopped starting up again like nothing had happened. Samuel stood very still on the porch. He had heard things come down before. Ordnance, aircraft once, in a country he didn't talk about. They were never quiet. Quiet was the part his body refused, the part that put a cold weight low in his gut before his head had caught up. "Stay," he told the dog. He went inside for the flashlight and the rifle. He took the truck halfway and walked the rest. The headlights washed across the field edge and stopped at the rows, swallowed by the corn after only a few feet. He killed the engine. He sat a moment in the tick of cooling metal, then got out, and the night came back around him huge and silent, except for his own boots in the dirt. Boone had come anyway. The dog followed to the fence line and stopped. Stood there with his ears up and would not cross. Samuel had hunted this animal through these same rows 100 times, and never once seen him refuse a field. "Suit yourself," Samuel said. He went in alone. The corn was past his shoulders. The flashlight gave him 6 feet and a wall of stalks beyond it, green going to black, and he moved the way the Corps had made him move 40 years back and never let him forget. Wait even, 1 row at a time, rifle low. The smell reached him before anything else. Not smoke, exactly. Scorched, but wrong. A sharp mineral burn like a struck match held under copper that sat at the back of his throat and stayed. Then the stalks ahead were broken, not burned, flattened. Pushed flat in a circle maybe 30 feet across, every plant bent the same direction from a center, and at the center, the dirt was black and glassy and still throwing heat up at him in a slow wave. He put the back of his hand toward it, the way you test a stove. Hot. But there was no fire, nothing burning. Just ground that had been something other than ground for a second, and was cooling now. The flashlight found the edge of it. Metal. Samuel stopped. It sat half buried in the blackened center of the circle, no larger than a cattle trough laid on its side. Smooth. Dark. The surface had no seams he could see, no rivets, no markings. Just a dull, skin-scorched silver along one edge, where it had met the ground. A hatch hung open on the side, facing him. He thought aircraft first. Some experimental thing. A cockpit, maybe. A pod. But there were no wings, no engine, nothing that looked built to stay in the air. Then the flashlight moved past it and found a shape in the bent stalks beyond. It was small, curled on its side in the dirt beside the open pod. Thin arms, thin legs, a torso, a head with a face turned half into the ground. The size of a half-grown boy, maybe, but the proportions were a grown thing's, and there were no clothes he understood, just a dark, close-fitting skin split open across the shoulder and the ribs. Samuel did not move for a slow 10 count. Then he crouched, rifle across his knee, and put the light on the wound. What came out of it was blue. Not dark red gone blue in a flashlight. Blue. The wet, deep blue of ink, of deep water, running slow from the tear across its shoulder and pooling black blue in the dirt. And where the beam caught it directly, it threw back a faint shine that no blood he had ever knelt in had thrown. His own breath was loud. He reached out and touched the side of its neck with 2 fingers. Under the skin, something moved. A pulse. Fast and too light, fluttering against his fingertips like a bird held in the hand. Alive. The face turned toward the light. The eyes did not open. The mouth worked, made no sound, and Samuel saw that the face was a man's face and was not. That everything about it was a half-inch off from a thing he knew. The brow too high, the jaw too fine, the skin pale to the point of gray and faintly traced underneath with the blue of the blood it ran on. Easy, he heard himself say. Easy now. It didn't answer. Its hand opened and closed on the dirt. He knelt there in the cooling circle with his light on a thing that bled wrong and breathed wrong and was dying in his corn. And he understood that whatever it was past the point where understanding it mattered. The wheelbarrow was where he'd left it by the shed, and that was the closest thing he had. Lifting it nearly undid him, not from the weight, but from the lack of it. He got his arms under the shoulders and the knees and braced for a grown body's drag, and it came up off the ground like a sack half full. 40 pounds, maybe. Less than the dog. The wrongness of that went through him worse than the blood had. The lightness of a thing built like a man and weighing like a child. And he held it against his chest a second longer than he needed to before he laid it in the barrow. The blue came off on his shirt. Warm. Warmer than his own blood would be. He pushed it out of the field one wheel rut at a time, the barrow fighting every furrow, the body shifting and small in the dark. At the fence, Boone fell in behind him, close at his heel now, low and quiet, ears flat. The dog kept its eyes on the thing in the barrow the whole way to the truck, and did not once look away. Getting it into the cab was its own slow work. He folded it across the bench seat, head toward the wheel, and drove the half-mile back to the house at a crawl, with one hand out holding it from rolling to the floor. The headlights showed him his own yard like a place he'd never seen. The porch, the 2 chairs, the open door he'd left. He carried it inside and laid it on the kitchen table because the table was long and flat and under the good light, and because some part of him 40 years buried was already triaging. Under the bulb, it looked worse and looked more human, both at once. He cut the dark skin suit away from the wounds with kitchen shears, a gash across the shoulder, a long, shallow split down the ribs, the blue welling slow from both. He didn't know its insides. He didn't know if pressure would help or kill it, if water was poison, if the things in his cabinet were medicine, or venom to whatever this ran on. He knew downed men. He knew you stopped the bleeding, and you kept them warm, and you didn't quit. So he did that. Clean towels, pressure, the bleeding slowing under his hands, a wool blanket over the thin chest. He worked without talking, the way he'd been taught. and Boone lay in the doorway with his head on his paws and watched. When the worst of the blue had stopped, Samuel pulled a chair to the table and sat, and looked at the face under his light. The fast little pulse he could see now in the throat. The blanket rising, falling, rising. "What in God's name are you?" he said. Not a question, just something to put in the quiet. He didn't expect the eyes to open. They opened. They were dark, all the way dark, no white to them, and they moved across the ceiling, the bulb, the wall, and found him. Fixed on him. There was pain in them, and there was something else he had no word for, something that looked almost like recognition, like a man waking in a strange room and finding the one face he'd hoped to find. The mouth moved. A dry sound came out, shaped wrong, then shaped into words, in English, in a voice like wind over a reed. "You found me," it said. Samuel's hand tightened on the edge of the table. "You're hurt bad," he said. "I don't know what you are. I don't know if any of what I did helps you. You understand me? I understand you." The dark eyes held him. The breath dragged. "I know your face." "You don't know me." "I do." It swallowed. The throat worked around it. "I came a long way to find this face." The kitchen clock ticked. Boone's tail moved once against the floor and went still. "You came from up there," Samuel said. Flat. From that, he tipped his head toward the window, the dark, the field. "Where are you from? What are you?" The thing on his table looked at him with those wrong, knowing eyes, and something in the ruined face tried to be gentle. "You think I fell from the stars," it said. "I did not fall from the stars." "Speak plain," Samuel said, and his voice came out lower than he meant. "Whatever you are, speak plain to me." It breathed. It gathered what it had, and Samuel watched the cost of every word move across its face. "I am not from another world," it said. "I am not from out there. There is no out there for me." The dark eyes did not leave his. "I am from here. From now. From this." It lifted one thin hand an inch off the blanket toward him and let it fall. "From what comes after you?" "After me." "I am the last one," it said. "There are no others. Not anywhere. Not anymore." Samuel sat very still under the kitchen light with the stranger's blue blood drying on his hands. "The last what?" he said. The thing on his table held his eyes and answered. "Human," it said. "I am human." It was still alive at dawn, which Samuel had not expected. He had sat the night out in the kitchen chair with the rifle across his knees, and Boone in the doorway. And somewhere past 3, he had slept without meaning to. And when the gray came up in the window and put light on the table, he woke certain he'd find a corpse. He didn't. The thin chest still moved. The blue had darkened to near black at the shoulder and crusted, the way a wound is supposed to, and that ordinary fact steadied him more than anything had since the field. So he checked it the way he'd check a calf that made it through a hard night, lifted the blanket, looked at the wounds in daylight. The rib gash had closed itself to a seam. The shoulder was worse, but holding. He put the back of his hand to the gray forehead and found it cool, cooler than his own, and didn't know if that was fever broken or fever it never had. The eyes opened while his hand was still there. Neither of them moved for a moment. Then Samuel took his hand back and stood and went to the counter and ran water into a cup, because that was a thing he knew how to do, and brought it over and got an arm behind the thin shoulders and lifted. "Slow," he said. It drank slow, swallowed, kept it down. He watched the throat work and waited for it to come back up, and it didn't. and something in him eased by a single notch. Whatever it ran on, water wasn't poison to it. That was one thing he knew now that he hadn't known at midnight. It held the cup itself the second time. The hands were wrong. Too many small bones moving under the skin, the fingers a knuckle too long. But they closed around the cup the way anybody's hands closed around a cup, careful of the weight, and brought it up. And that was almost worse than the wrongness. The familiar part. He looked away from it. "You'll eat?" he said. "I don't know," it said. The reed voice was stronger than last night. "I don't know what your food is now." Now. He heard the implication and decided not to chase it yet. He brought it broth because it seemed the safest thing to try. It took a little, kept that too. He pulled the chair around and sat where it could see him without turning its head, and he asked his questions the way he'd been taught to ask them once, in another life, in rooms he didn't think about. Short. One at a time. No room in them to wander. "Where are you from?" "Here." The dark eyes found the window, the corn, the long, flat Montana morning past the glass, the mountains a blue line at the far edge of it. This place is still here, where I come from. Not the corn, not the house, the land under it. I stood on this same ground. A breath. There was nothing on it but me. When? A long way. I can't put it in your years. Long enough that your years stopped being counted. It turned its head, slow, and looked at him. Far enough that I am the only one left to do the counting. The only one. Of what? Samuel kept his voice level. You said it last night. Say it again in the light. Human, it said. The last. There is no one after me. I am the end of it. He had told himself in the dark that the light would make it foolish. It didn't. The thing said it the same way both times, without weight. The way you state a fact you've carried so long it's gone smooth. What happened to everybody, Samuel said. And here it stopped. Not from the wound. He watched it choose the words. Watched the choosing cost it, like a man trying to soften a truth that could not be softened. It wasn't a war, it said. People always think war. There was no war. No sickness took us. No fire. No machine we made that turned on us. The sky didn't fall. It breathed. We weren't killed. We were led. Led. We followed something, it said. All of us. For a very long time. And it took us all the way to the end of the road, and the end of the road was nothing. The dark eyes held him. Everyone you know. Everyone they will know. All of it ran out, one careful step at a time. And the worst of it is that every step looked like getting better. Samuel said nothing. Outside, far off, a meadowlark started up and quit. Followed what? He said. It looked at him for a moment. You haven't found it yet, it said. You're close. That's why now. That's why here. Another breath. Dragged. It was in the ground the whole time. Drawn on it. The Nazca lines. Samuel knew the lines. He'd seen them in a magazine years back, in a dentist's waiting room. The great shape scratched in the Peru desert that you could only see whole from the air. A bird. A monkey. Lines running straight for miles to nothing. He'd thought at the time that it was a strange thing for people to have made and gone back to his coffee. The desert pictures, he said. Peru. Those and others. All over. People always thought they were art. Worship. Some of them thought they were signs for things to land. A sound came out of it that might have been a laugh once, before it got this tired. They weren't art. They were instructions. Someone older than us drew them, before us, for us. and we looked at them for thousands of years, and called them pretty, and never once read them. And someone finally read them. Yes. It nodded once. Soon, someone will understand what the lines are for, and the day that happens, everything changes. It shifted, and the shoulder pulled, and it went still until the pull passed. It's a map, a path. Do this, then this, then this. And when they start walking it, the walking pays. Sickness ends. People stop dying of being old. Everything we couldn't do for 10,000 years, we do in 50. It's a gift. It looks exactly like a gift, all the way down. You're saying the benefits eventually stop. The early steps are good. The eyes didn't leave him. I am not here about the early steps. I'd give anything to keep the early steps. The last step is the one. It stopped. The last step changes what a person is, just a little, and their children a little more, and theirs. Each one a small good change, a better body, a longer life, until enough small changes stack up that the thing at the end of them isn't us anymore, and then that isn't it anymore either. On, better and better, further and further, until the thin hand lifted and fell, until me, and then not even me. Wonder and dread sat down in the kitchen together. Samuel felt both at once and didn't try to take them apart. You're telling me the cure for everything is the thing that ends us, he said. I'm telling you it's the same step, it said. That's why no one stopped. Who stops a thing that's saving them? Then why come back, Samuel said. If it already happened, if you're the last, what's the use of telling a dead man's father he's going to die? Because it hasn't happened to you yet, it said. It happened to me. It's finished for me. There's nothing behind me to save. But you, it looked at him. You haven't taken the last step. You haven't even found the map. I came back to the one place, the one time before the first step, to make sure someone is standing here who knows where the road goes. So that when they start walking it, and the gifts come, and everyone says, keep going, someone says no. Not to the road, not to the early steps, just to the last one. Then go to Washington, Samuel said. Go to the men who decide. Go to the scientists who'll read your map. I'm a man with a dog and 40 acres. I can't stop a thing the whole world's going to want. The visitor was quiet. I didn't choose where I landed, it said. I came to the place the record gave me. I came to a name. What name? It held his eyes. Samuel Walker, it said. The kitchen went very still. He had not told it his name. He had not told it anything. He'd cut a suit off it and stopped its bleeding and given it water, and nowhere in any of that had he said who he was, and he knew that the way he knew the weight of his own rifle with certainty, because Samuel Walker did not give his name to strangers, and never had. I never told you that, he said. His voice came out low and flat and careful, the voice from the rooms he didn't think about. No. Then how? The same way I knew your face. It didn't blink. The dark eyes just held him, steady, almost gentle, and would not go 1 inch further. I told you. I came a long way to find it. That's not an answer. It's all of the answer I'll give today, it said. Not because I'm hiding it. Because you won't take it yet. There's a thing I have to tell you, Samuel Walker, and you'll call me a liar when I do. And I need you to know me a little better before I spend the time I've got left being called a liar. It breathed, and the breath caught wrong in its chest, and Samuel heard the catch. I don't have enough time to waste any of it on you not believing me. The wall stood there between them, plain and immovable. Samuel looked at the thing on his table that knew his name, that had crossed everything there was to cross to say it, and he understood that pushing the wall would not move it, that this was a thing that would die before it would say a thing out of turn. He didn't push it. He filed it away and moved on. It got worse fast in the afternoon. The catch in the breath spread. By the slant light of late day, the visitor was laboring for every one, the thin ribs working, and when Samuel lifted it to drink, it couldn't keep the water this time, and the little it brought back up was threaded blue. He held the cup anyway, wiped its mouth with a clean towel, sat it up higher against the folded blankets in the hope that breathing would come easier. It didn't. "You're spending yourself," Samuel said. "Talking. You should rest the talking. Resting won't fix it." It said it without fear, the same way it said everything else. "It isn't the wounds, Samuel Walker. It's the crossing. Coming back the way I came back. That road was never meant for a body to survive. I knew that when I started. Every hour here costs me an hour I don't get back. I'm not dying from the field. I started dying the moment I left." The dark eyes found him. "Don't spend your days trying to save me. The crossing took that choice away before I ever got here. Spend the days listening. That's the only thing that matters now." Samuel Walker had spent his whole long life being a man who could fix the thing in front of him. A fence, an engine in a cold barn at 4 a.m, a wound. He had been a younger man once in places he didn't name, and he had learned there what hands could do under fire. Pressure held until help came, a strap pulled tight above the bleeding, a man hauled out across open ground who had no business breathing, and breathed. He had also learned the other half of it, that sometimes there was nothing left to fix. Some men you carried out knowing they would never leave the field alive. You carried them anyway. He sat in his kitchen as the Montana light went red and then gray on the wall, beside a dying thing that had crossed the end of time to find his name, and he understood, as he'd understood before with men whose names he still carried, that this was one he could not fix. He pulled the blanket up over the thin chest anyway, set fresh water by the table for when it could take it, stayed in the chair. Boone came and lay against his boots. "All right," Samuel said, to the dark, to the thing, to himself. "All right, I'll listen." On the third day, it stopped pretending it had more than the third day. Samuel knew before he came into the kitchen. Something had changed in the silence of the house. Boone was already up off his bed and standing by the table when Samuel came down at first light. The visitor's breathing had gone shallow and far apart. A breath, and then a long nothing. And then a breath, and the gray of its skin had gone grayer. The blue underneath it, faint now, like ink run almost out. He sat down in the chair he'd worn a place into over 2 days and 2 nights. The dark eyes came open and found him, slow, and there was less behind them than yesterday, but enough. "Today," Samuel said. Not a question. "Today." The reed of its voice was nearly gone. "I held the rest of it back long enough. I told you I would tell you a thing, and that you'd want to call me a liar, and I needed you to know me first." A breath, and the long nothing, and another. "You know me now, as much as anyone left does." "I know you," Samuel said, and found it was true. The eyes held him. "You asked me why you, out of everyone. Why a man with a dog and 40 acres, and no part in any of it." A pause that wasn't for effect, only for air. "The line that ends in me on an empty world begins in this house, in your blood. I didn't come to a stranger. I came home, as far back as home goes." Samuel sat with that. "The branch is your son," it said. "The oldest. Caleb." It said the name carefully, the way you say a name you've only ever read and never spoken. From Caleb's son, down and down, all the rest of it, all the way to me. That's the door I came through. That's why the record kept your name. You're the first of us. Samuel did not call it a liar. 3 days ago, in the field. Maybe. Not now. You don't kneel in a thing's blue blood at midnight and cut a suit off its broken body and hold the cup to its mouth for 3 days. And then, at the end, call it a liar to its face. That wasn't in him, and it wasn't what the thing on his table had earned. "Son," Samuel said, "listen to me a minute." The dark eyes waited. "You came a long way, longer than I can hold in my head, and I think," he chose the words carefully, "I think somewhere on a road, that a man could lose his place, get turned around, land where he meant to land, and still have it be the wrong house." He leaned closer. "Maybe it's the wrong house, son. Maybe there was another walker, another field, and the dying's mixing it up on you. I've seen dying do that to good men. Mix the names, mix the faces. Put a man somewhere he was 40 years ago and have him swear it's now. It's not the dying." Samuel shook his head. "You don't know that. You can't, from inside it." He said it kindly. "Hear the rest. You say the line runs through Caleb's son, but Caleb doesn't have a son." He shook his head. 3 girls. That's all he's got. Avery, Dana, and the little one's 16 this spring. Marion's done having children, and has been for years. He spread his hands on the table. The numbers didn't work. So there's no son to start your line. No door for it to come through. I'd give it to you if it were there. I would. It isn't. You've got the wrong people. And I think you've got them because you're hurt, and you're dying, and the road broke something loose in you. That's all. That's no shame." The visitor looked at him for a long time. It didn't argue. That was the thing that stayed with Samuel after, in the nights. It didn't grab his wrist, or raise its voice, or swear. It only looked at him with those all-dark eyes, tired past the end of tiredness, and something in the ruined face that was almost a smile and almost grief. "I can't explain every life," it said. "I never could. I know the history. The whole of it, age after age, written down by the people who came after. But a single life, one man, one marriage, one child, that comes when no one thought a child would come. That's small. History doesn't keep the small things. It kept that the line was real, that it ran through Caleb, and that it started here." A breath. Far apart now. "I don't know the door, Samuel. I only know I came through it. You're telling me there isn't one. I'm telling you I'm standing on the other side of it. Son, I won't fight you," it said. "I don't have the strength for it, and I wouldn't spend it here. Believe I'm confused. It costs you nothing to believe that today. Just..." The thin hand moved, found the edge of Samuel's sleeve, rested there, the long fingers light as nothing. "Remember the last step. That's all I crossed everything to say. When the gifts come, take them. When the road asks for one more, the last one, you stop. You, or your blood after you. Someone in this house has to be the one who says it ends here. That's enough. The rest you can call confusion if it lets you sit with me." Samuel didn't pull his sleeve away. "All right," he said. "All right. I'll remember the last step." Then it wasn't for nothing. The eyes eased. None of it was. It went a little before noon. There was no rattle, no last words. The breath simply came farther and farther apart until Samuel, counting them without meaning to the way he'd once counted them for other men, counted past where the next one should have been. It never came. The thin hand was still resting on his sleeve. The all-dark eyes were open and looking toward the window, toward the Montana light, toward the corn. The last small human thing it did was nothing at all. It simply stopped, looking at the world it had crossed the end of time to reach, and stayed looking. Samuel sat with it a while. Then he closed the eyes with 2 fingers. The way you do. The way he'd done before. He picked the lone tree on the rise that looked down over the field where it had come down, because that was the right place, and he didn't have to think about why. The ground was hard, and he was 70, and it took him 3 hours, and he was glad of every one of them. He dug until his back was a single flat ache, and his hands were raw through the gloves. And that was good. That was the right kind of work, the kind that uses a man up so there's no room left in him for anything else. Boone lay at the tree line in the grass and watched, and did not come closer. He wrapped it in the wool blanket it had lain under for 3 days. It weighed nothing going down, the same nothing it had weighed coming up out of the corn. The pod went into the ground with it. It had brought the thing here. That seemed reason enough. He filled the grave in by hand. He set a flat stone at the head of it, because a grave should have something. And he didn't carve anything on the stone, because there was nothing to carve. No name, no date that meant anything, no words that would hold what was under it. He stood there when it was done with his hat in his hands, and didn't pray, because he'd lost the habit a long time back, and didn't speak, because there was no one left to speak to. The sun was going down behind the mountains and throwing the tree's shadow long across the new dirt. After a while, he put his hat back on and walked down to the house with the dog falling in beside him. The night came on the way. It always came on. Samuel sat on the porch in the rocking chair with his pipe and a beer gone warm at his elbow, and Boone lay across his boots, breathing his half-snore, and the corn stood black against a paler black, and above all of it the stars came down to the edges of the world the way they did out here, and nowhere else he'd ever been. It was the same porch, the same chair, the same pipe, the same dog, the same sky he'd watched for 11 years, and 3 nights ago had watched right up until the light came down out of the west. And somehow it was not the same. There was a grave under the tree now. There was an empty chair beside his that had been empty a long time, and an emptiness in the house tonight that was new and smaller and somehow heavier. He didn't take any of it apart. He wasn't a man for taking things apart. He smoked his pipe down to the heel and let the warm beer sit and watched the sky not do anything. Slowly, the way it always did. And he thought about a confused, dying creature that had crossed something no road crosses to land in the wrong field and say the wrong name. And he was sorry for it, the way you're sorry for a friend who goes out believing a thing that isn't so. The wrong house, he thought. Poor thing came all that way to the wrong house. He knocked the pipe out against the rail. He finished the beer because it was there. He sat until the cold came up out of the ground and into his knees, and then he stood, and his bones complained about the grave digging. He let them. "Come on," he told the dog. Boone got up stiff and followed him in. Samuel left the 2 chairs where they were on the porch, the way he always did, and shut the door on the night, and went up to bed, and slept the whole way through for the first time in 3 nights, the deep, flat sleep of a man who has used himself all the way up and made his peace with a sad thing and put it behind him. The next morning was ordinary until it wasn't. He'd had the television on for the noise of it while he made his coffee, the way he sometimes did, a voice in the house, and he wasn't listening until the words arranged themselves into something that made him set the cup down. After decades of analysis, an international team confirming this morning what they are calling the most significant discovery in human history. The geoglyphs, including the famous Nazca lines of Peru, were not, as long believed, ceremonial or artistic. Researchers now say they encode a sequence, a set of instructions, and that the first stage has already been Samuel stood very still in his kitchen with his hand flat on the counter. The voice went on. Gift. Breakthrough. The dawn of a new age for the species. The first step. They kept saying the first step like it was the best news the world had ever had. And on the screen there were the lines in the desert, the bird, the long straight runs to nothing, exactly as they'd been in a magazine in a dentist's office 40 years back, exactly as a dying thing had described them on his table 3 days ago. To the word. To the word. The phone rang. He looked at it a long moment before he crossed the kitchen and took it off the wall. Walker, he said. Dad. It was Caleb. There was something high and unsteady running under his voice. The same excitement he'd had as a kid whenever he burst through the door with a fish too big for the stringer. Dad, you sitting down? Okay. You're not gonna believe this. I don't believe it. We just got back from the doctor. The television was still going behind him. The first step. The dawn of a new age. Tell me, Samuel said. It's Marion. He laughed once, breathless and disbelieving. Dad, she's pregnant. 48 years old and they're sure they did it twice. We weren't even trying. God, we thought that part of our life was done years ago. It's too early to tell if it's a boy or a girl, weeks before they can say. But it's real. We're having a baby. The laugh again, cracking. Funny, isn't it, Dad? At our age, another kid. On the screen behind him were the lines in the desert. The path. The first step. Exactly as the dying creature had said. Samuel turned and looked out the kitchen window, up the rise to the lone tree and the flat stone under it, and the new dirt going gray in the morning light. The silence on the line stretched out long. Dad? You there? I'm here, son, Samuel said. You okay? You're awful quiet. Samuel looked at the grave a while longer. Everything will be okay, son, he said. Yeah? Caleb laughed. Easier now, grateful for it. Yeah, it will. Just took us by surprise is all. A good surprise. A son this time, maybe. Who knows? Maybe. He looked toward the grave one last time, up there under the tree, overlooking the field where the light had come down out of the west. Do not worry. Everything is exactly as it should be, Samuel said.